That's when the transformation happens, when you create the new habits and you've got this brand new level of health. Because one of our other goals is we want to make sure that your next 10 years are your best 10 years. And we believe when health improves, everything improves. And so Metabolomics is one of those ways that you can avoid any kind of death by neglect or any kind of breakdown in your health by looking at these little nuances. If you look at chemistry, when you've got these bonds that are pulled together, like proteins are just bonds of amino acids. And when you break those amino acid bonds, that's when you get the energetic expression. And so that's what creates energy in the body. And that's what creates cellular expressions. And that's where peptides are so phenomenal. And their serotonin always ends up being a bit high. And this is typical when we see like people who tend to have a little more on their plate than what they can typically handle. Their serotonin levels get a little high. So that's the adaptive response.
All right. Good morning and welcome everybody to the Unreasonable Health Podcast. This is your host of the day, Cade Archibald, and really a pleasure to be here. We got our amazing functional medicine practitioner, peptide expert genius, and founder creator of Go Wellness, East West Health, and the Accelerate Wellness programs, Reagan Archibald. Reagan, how's it going today?
So it's a beautiful June morning, June 1st today.
Yeah, it is a gorgeous morning. Excited to see the summer and get some good mountain biking in. When do you think Deer Valley is going to be opening up for mountain biking? Are they still?
Father's Day weekend is there. Really? Deer Valley's pretty. I mean, they're predictable that way. But we'll see. This year, there's still a ton of snow up there. So
it's going to be a mud bog up there.
I don't
melting quick.
Slippery slide.
Nice. All right. Well, last night we had our Health Accelerator challenges, the hack. If you're not a part of that community, make sure you go to acueastwest.com/hack. That's HAC. So go check that out. That's our Health Accelerator community where you can, we meet every single week, and we're doing that live, where you can learn different things about your health and then implement some challenges. So the challenge this week is get out in the sunlight in the morning. So see the sunrise. That can be really, really helpful. For energy levels, mitochondrial health, stress levels as well, especially helpful on your adrenals. And then the other one, so you can do either or of these or both, is cold showers. That's really helpful and effective on stress levels as well. So that is your challenge. Get after it, everybody. And then lastly, we got the lastly, we got a whole show in front of us, but last announcement or question here is the peptide of the week. So we got a cool peptide of the week, Reagan. I'm interested and excited to hear about this one. So let's hear about the peptide of the week.
So the peptide of the week is SS-31, also known as Bendavia. And some of the research on this one, it's a mitochondrial derived peptide. And if you think of the mitochondria, they are the light generators of the body. And literally our bodies are energy conductors. I mean, if you think about how much energy every single cell in your brain generates, it could light up your whole house and then some. So if you have ways of turning up the energy just a little bit, then SS-31 is a way to go for you. So some of the studies, and we'll jump in. I'm actually going to be sharing a little more on this peptide in the podcast. So stick around, and I'm going to show you how to discover your kind of your untapped energy sources by looking at Metabolomics. But SS-31, it helps with any kind of musculoskeletal disorders. It's been shown to help with mitochondrial diseases. It's great for kidney disease, kidney failure. It's awesome for the heart. They've actually done research that shows it is very beneficial if you have any kind of arterial sclerosis. It's great for cardiovascular, any cardiovascular diseases, great for the eyes. It's neuro regenerative. And this particular peptide is not easy to come by, but we've now got a new pharmacy where we can get it. And so I'm really excited for this one. So, and we'll jump more into it, Cade. But yeah, SS-31, that's it.
Love it. Awesome. Well, I'm excited to try that one out. I have not tried SS-31. That is on my bucket list of peptides to go after. So it potentially sounds very similar to Mono-C. Maybe does it work on a little bit different pathway?
Yep, little different pathway because like MOTS-C is going to be more. It's a gene expression that activates more of the AMPK pathway in the mitochondria, which is kind of like your bypass energy pathway. Whereas SS-31 seems to work on a totally different pathway. So yeah, we'll jump into this one a little more.
Cool. Well, I'm going to try that instead of MOTS-C. It's my next peptide round. So killer. Got it.
Yeah. Or even get the double whammy and do both of them at the same time.
Just when in doubt or when trying to make a decision, just do both.
Yep, that's it. I think they actually would really complement each other. And SS-31, I mean, it will be big. It's actually big right now, and it's just getting better and better. So a lot going on with it.
Beautiful.
Cool. Well, let's jump in. So today, what I want to cover is your metabolomics. And so many of you, you've ran your metabolomics, and for most of us, it can be a pretty complicated test. And there's so much of it that we're always like, wow, what is this? And there's always little nuances that I'm uncovering as I go through it. So I'm going to share with you just an overview of how you can look at metabolomics with brand new eyes. And if you can look at it with some fresh perspective, I think you'll notice that there's so many benefits to running this test, because what the metabolomics is, it's essentially our Nutra-Eval. It's an organic acids test, amino acids test, and it's looking at all the toxic elements. And then even in some of these cases, we're looking at specific genetic pathways, and in certain times we will. And so there's 5 core aspects to this: oxidative stress, mitochondrial dysfunction, omega imbalance, toxic exposure, and methylation imbalance. And as you think about those, you're like, what does this all relate to? Well, all of these are upstream interferences that get in the way of your body making really good energy and having really unreasonable health. And that's one of the reasons we want to look at these, is because there's things that just don't show up in blood labs or the stool that do show up in the urine. So this is a urine test. And what you do is you collect your your morning void, morning urine. And if you wake up 6 hours before, you collect that urine sample as well and mix them together. And then there's a blood spot that we use to get the omega imbalance, because the fatty acids do need to come from the blood, but everything else comes from the urine. And if you think about what happens to our blood, it gets metabolized and it gets broken down, and a lot of those proteins in our blood gets excreted and goes out into our urine. So what this test actually is giving us is all of the metabolic byproducts of how your body utilized what was in the blood. So it gives us just another pathway so that we can see how well your body's actually functioning. And gives us, once again, it shows us deficiencies, and then interferences, because there's two things we're doing in the analyze, because we have kind of this three-step process. We analyze any kind of deficiencies, any kind of inflammation, and then we optimize. So we find the pathways that need to be built up. We find the things that need to be removed, and we remove those. And then that's when the transformation happens, is when we come in as a team and we say, okay, can you work together with us as a partner in your health, so that we can actually give you the right lifestyle and the right coaching, but you do the work. And that's when the transformation happens, when you create the new habits and you've got this brand new level of health. Because one of our other goals is we want to make sure that your next 10 years are your best 10 years. And we believe when health improves, everything improves. And so Metabolomics is one of those ways that you can avoid any kind of death by neglect or any kind of breakdown in your health by looking at these little nuances. So let's go. And Kate, and Metabolomics, is this a head scratcher for you too, or is it always come pretty natural?
No, I'm really intrigued by it, and it's I think it is kind of like it's nice to get the snapshot of what needs to be overall focused on and worked on. But then it goes into like the nitty gritty details, which I think is super, super nerdy, but really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is, and this is my test. Full disclosure, I'm giving my HIPAA release right here. So if you look at this, you'd say, all right, well, my vitamin A, I was pretty happy with my antioxidants. They looked like they're pretty lined up. For the most part, I could use a little more vitamin A. So I'm like, great, more liver. I can eat some more pumpkin, sweet potato, eggs, kale, broccoli. So these are all things I've just said, all right, let me just add a little more into my diet. For my vitamin E, my tocopherols, they're still in the optimal range, but it's not like perfect. So, adding in some more leafy greens, some more avocado. I have not been eating avocados like I used to. And then even adding in like some more olive oil, which I had last night. My CoQ10 looks great. My glutathione could use a little help. So made a big thing of, kale to get some sulfur out of that. And then I can get it from fish, different meats, all help with glutathione, maybe a little alpha lipoic acid. But then what I realized too is I need to be changing up what I'm eating on my plant-based antioxidants. So I started doing tamaro more religiously, and I'm taking some ginger at night to increase my plant-based antioxidants. This is where resveratrol is really good. Green tea. So I've got this beautiful like lion's mane green tea blend that I've been using in the morning. So after the podcast, I'll make a cup of that. So this is where Metabolomics is kind of fun, because I like that I can just, for the most part, work on my diet to increase these deficiencies. But then some of these areas, like my biotin is super low. And so I said, oh man, I'm like 7 out of 10 on that in deficiencies. So I'm going to, and I'm already started, I'm taking 8,000 micrograms of biotin. And then I started taking more riboflavin and B3. And so I just realized those 3 B vitamins were super low. So I'm going to be, I've already started supplementing. I'm also added in an afternoon dose of magnesium of the MagTech. Okay, that stuff is awesome. It feels really good at night or in the afternoon. It's just a nice little boost.
Nice. So you're doing it in the afternoon, not just at night.
Yeah, actually, well, MagTech is because it's got the threonate. I'll do a couple of those in the morning and then a couple of those in the afternoon, and then I'll put some magnesium on my body before I go to bed at night.
Nice, awesome.
Yeah, the whole world of living with a computer by your side is really depleting on the magnesium, and even if you're eating a ton of leafy greens and chocolate, 2 of my favorites, you're still going to need to supplement with magnesium. And then next time you're up, actually, you're coming up Friday tomorrow. So We need to get a float going. Have you been in those magnesium floats?
Yeah, so we have the float spa down here.
Oh, that's right. Yes, you've been.
So there, it's so cool. They also, so they have the float spa. You can do couples or singles, and then they also have a cold plunge sauna. So there's a room where there's like it's like a two-person thing. So like it's perfect for a date night. Amber actually told me about it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's incredible. So you can do sauna, cold plunge, and then they got a shower in there. And then the same thing with the float spas. They got a shower set up. Beautiful facility too. So if you're in St. George, check out, I think it's True North Float Spa, something like that. Yeah,
Nice. I got to hit that up next time I'm down there. Our float spa is called Sync. I think Sync Float or something, but it's like synchronized. And it's just the floats, but it's awesome. So, but yeah, they use high doses of medical grade magnesium sulfate, and so your body is just hovering on top. It feels really cool.
So cool.
Yes. I did add in a little more molybdenum because I also found out I was glycine deficient. And so I've added in glycine or the methylglycine, so kind of the precursor for glycine, which is easier to absorb. But I really want to protect my joints. That's my big goal over the next year is every day I'm walking backwards. I did my 10 minutes this morning with the dogs, and then did it yesterday. I've pretty much not missed a day yet doing my tibialis raises, my calf raises. And then I also found that I needed a little more enzymes. I'd forgotten and just hadn't taken enzymes in a while. So pulled out the apple cider vinegar, taken some more enzymes. So this is, it's a great test because you can just make these small little changes. And I'm already feeling just a little bit better, like maybe 1-2%. So in some cases, we've seen dramatic changes happen when we ran these labs on patients. I remember a client who I ran this on, and we realized that she had like crazy mycotoxic loads in her. Yeah, and we'll get to the yeast section in a minute here. And I said, I think you got mold in your house. And she's like, oh, no, I live in the desert. There's no way. And I was like, well, I would just recommend looking because, she wasn't eating a bunch of, like processed foods or foods that would contain mycotoxins. And sure enough, she found a leak in her garage, and that leak, her master bedroom was right by her garage, and it came through the wall, and it'd probably been there for like 3 years, and it was just getting nasty. And so, yeah, they remediated the mold and got it in time. So they didn't, because I've had other patients who've had to pretty much strip down their house right down to the studs just to get rid of all the mold. They had some leaky faucet in their bathroom for decades. And then the mold just grows everywhere that it's dark. So, yeah, it's a real good indicator.
That's crazy. And what's the marker on that? Or we're going to talk.
We'll get there. Yeah. So as we go through this, and grab your test if you've got it with you, because I'm gonna weave in SS-31 with this because it's kind of interesting as you look at these mitochondrial derived peptides, and you see, man, there's so much potential with them. But one of the things that we're going to do is if you look at your oxidative stress and mitochondrial dysfunction, the oxidative stress is what's triggering mitochondrial dysfunction. But it's also, these two go hand in hand because it shows how well your body can handle fatty acids, carbohydrates, and proteins. And I tend to be, I've gotten more and more lax, and I put more generous servings of carbohydrates at night, but I tend to steer clear of carbohydrates in general. But one of the things I found out is my fatty acids are doing great. My adipic acid and seborrheic acid, those are doing awesome. So my liver and gallbladder function is breaking those down. Things seem to go well on my beta oxidation, which creates this big energetic pathway. So our bodies use fatty acids, fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. Those are what are called your macronutrients. And then they are going through their own breakdown, their metabolic breakdown, so that you can get acetyl-CoA. And the acetyl-CoA goes in two pathways. One is ketogenesis. So for those of you who love to be in ketosis, it's great. We just want to make sure that these metabolic pathways are working properly for you. And then the other pathway is the citric acid cycle, or you remember the Krebs cycle, Kate, from like high school biology or college biology?
I don't remember it from there. I remember discussing it when we talk about like stem cells and things. So it's like the cycle there, but no, not really.
Okay, well, the citric acid cycle and Krebs cycle, same thing. It's just different name. And this is like a 3-carboxyl pathway. So our bodies are carbon, and this is one of the reasons why we use CellCore. And CellCore is really fascinating because they've mimicked the citric acid cycle and mimicked these carbon bonds that are necessary, because anytime, if you look at chemistry, when you've got these bonds that are pulled together, like proteins are just bonds of amino acids. And when you break those amino acid bonds, that's when you get the energetic expression. And so that's what creates energy in the body. And that's what creates cellular expressions. And that's where peptides are so phenomenal. Carbohydrates, we start breaking those down with the saliva in our mouth. There's an enzyme called amylase, and that's where you start breaking down these carbohydrates. But one of the things I discovered is my pyruvic acid is on the lower side, and then that's really lowered my lactic acid. And so that's what happens if you're not eating enough carbohydrates. And then what I'm doing is I'm not generating as much energy as I could in the citric acid cycle. And so this is where I can add in more NAD and then add in maybe 50 grams more of carbohydrates at night. And I should be able to generate some more energy pretty easily. So that's how you can look at this. Maybe you're looking at yours and your pyruvic acid looks good, your lactic acid looks good, and so it's no problem. And some of you may say, well, having low lactic acid is great because then you don't get sore when you work out. And that's, maybe it's all the thymosin beta-4 I've been taking that has kept that low, but it's actually lactic acid is fuel for your muscles. It's actually really good. And yes, you can feel that breakdown in muscles, but it's not necessarily the lactic acid. What we found is it's lactic acid that gets kind of built up in those muscles, but then the muscles are feeding on those, and that's the reparative process. And yes, I'm still so sore from the Murphy. Did you end up doing the Murphy, Kate?
No, I haven't done it yet. Maybe Saturday morning. You game to do it again?
Oh, no, you're on your own. My lats are so sore because I did it like 10 minutes faster than I'd ever done it before because
Your time was killer.
Oh, I was pushing it so hard. And I was just trying to get close to Tristan's time. I cheated because Tristan went first. Well, I didn't know what time he was going, but yeah, he went first. And so I was like, I think I can get the same time with a 15-pound vest. I had 5 pounds less. And then he's doing pull-ups on a massive bar, like a swing set bar. He did it at the park, and he was like, that was so hard. So I don't know how he did it. That dude's a beast. Yeah.
That's like full hand, not even like, that's crazy thinking.
Yeah, it tends to be like the narrower the bar, like it's almost easier on your hand grip. But yeah, he was on a thick bar. So anyway, no thanks. And yes, I could feel my lactic acid. I think just by doing the Murph, and I ended up doing it like 49 and a half minutes. Amber did it in 36 minutes. But she didn't have a vest on. And what she did is just kettlebell squats. But that is beastly. Amber is our sister, my younger sister. Kate's older, but yeah.
Yeah,
well done, Amber.
Super. She's getting it's just crazy how fit she's getting recently.
Yeah, she is crushing it. So anyway, when you look at your labs, you can now see there's at the byproduct of ketogenesis, you can get these ketones. And, for those of you who, Kate, I don't know if we have not introduced my ketone podcast with Gary yet. And so that's one, that's the one. Yeah, we'll have that released very soon. And, but what you'll learn is that ketones are like the secondary energy source. And so the easier your body can go to burn fat as an energy source versus sugar, the better off you're going to be. But you want to make sure all of the citric acid cycle is functioning properly, because this is where you enter into what's called the electron transport chain. And so if you think of the electron transport chain, one of the best peptides and molecules that we use is called methylene blue. And you'll see us, we've talked about this over the years. But methylene blue is unique because it's an electron donor. So it can take a proton, it can take a neutron, and it can move them throughout this electron transport chain so that your mitochondria gets activated. And then the methylene blue helps with the nanomotors on the mitochondria. So you get just this nice energetic frequency. And it does seem to help with melanin. And melanin in the skin is what gives your skin kind of a nice tan, but it also is how you get energy, or essentially like photosynthesis in human form through the sun. And so the mitochondria essentially, if you think of the sun as like the main cell tower, if we'll use your mitochondria cell phones, the sun is the main cell tower. Well, you want your cell phones all to be connected to that cellular tower. And so that's where the mitochondrial health is really important. That's where like methylene blue is really critical for this transportation chain, as is like NAD, and then glutathione and coenzyme Q10. So all of these, this electron transport chain essentially is creating what's called ATP, or adenosine triphosphate. And this ATP, that's your energy source. And so this is really powerful. All right, so that gives you kind of an idea metabolically, and then we can jump into the organic acids test. And Kate, I'll let you answer the question on the chat box there. That can just be typed in. But as far as the organic acids test goes, there's malabsorption and dysbiotic markers that you want to look at. And this is where I realize I need a little more enzymes. Yeah, you look at it, my markers are in the green. My endolactylic acid and my phenolactylic acid, if yours are low, then you need more enzymes. If you look at your branch chain catabolites, and remember, catabolic state is not good, because that's when your muscles get broken down. And so this can be a deficiency of amino acids, specifically your branch chain amino acids. So a lot of people that's the big rave right now, the BCAAs, and that's branch chain amino acids. And those are so good for you because what they can do is support this pathway in really novel ways. And so if you found, like I have, lower levels of glutaric acid and lower levels of isovaleric glycine. And so this is where I've been using glycine now, and more the methylated version of glycine. And it's really important that I took this test because I'm working on my joint health right now, and glycine is a really important thing. And where do we get glycine? Well, glycine gets disrupted from glyphosate. And so glyphosate is pretty much everywhere, and it's followed me for a couple decades, but it's found in Roundup. That's the glyphosate or glyphosate. Is what binds to the same amino acid profile as glycine does. And glycine is one of the major amino acids, the major three that hold your connective tissue together in your joints. So really important. When I saw that one, I said, all right, I'm going to fix this fast. dysbiotic markers. You can see certain markers will show up, like the benzoic acid and the hippuric acid, if there's preservatives in food. And that's where I was like, man, I eat a couple protein bars a week. When I'm in a rush, I need to cut those out because, yeah, even though they're like, healthy, organic, whatever, there's still preservatives and things that are in, that are in packages. So that gives me a nice little wake up call. So look at your dysbiosis markers. If those first three, like your DHPPA or your 3-hydroxyphenolic acid or 4-hydroxyphenolic acid are low, then there's some large intestine or bacterial overgrowth. If your benzoic or hippuric acid, if those markers are low, then there might be some preservatives you're eating and not even aware of it, or maybe something in your cosmetics. So something to look at. Here's the yeast and fungal dysbiosis markers. So, okay, this is the one where you can see if somebody's maybe has mold in their house. This is one of these areas. And so, and that's typically where if someone's not eating a lot of things. Like what was interesting is mine is my D-arabinol was 53. And so I was like, man, so that's where yeast are making sugar in your body. So I started on oil of oregano. I'm not feeding the yeast. So my citramalic acid was fine. That shows when yeast are growing, if you're, eating the wrong foods. And then my tartaric acid was great. That's the yeast pH. So for some reason though, the colonies of yeast in my gut were making more sugar. And so, it seems like they're healthy yeast. There's no major overgrowths, but I still want to make sure maybe I need to trim the hedges a little bit down there.
Interesting. Yeah. So what that means is they're creating their own sugar. It's not like you're eating something that's creating it. You just got some interesting critters down there that are kind of producing some sugar.
Yeah, because we've got good yeast that are symbiotic, and so I'm not sure what's going on. They're making too much sugar. They're trying to have their own party and just stuff out the bacteria is what my guess is.
So if could that lead to, if that kind of continues, could that lead to blood sugar issues, or is yeast sugar like a different component?
No, I think that's a good question. I don't really know the full answer to that. I would imagine so, because this is kind of a metabolic byproduct from yeast. And so, so this is where, fortunately my blood sugar has been awesome, but I'll check it on my next lab, which is coming right up. So yeah, but interesting. And then if you look at the citramalic acid, and this is yeast growth, this is usually where there's either yeast in your house or there's something that you're doing that's feeding it. And then the tartaric acid, that's the pH of the yeast. So if it gets really high, that means the yeast are dominating your gut. So luckily my pH is, in the green, it's well below 15. And so it's doing great there. There you go.
Citramelic acid, that would be, so if I'm eating, like say I'm drinking a lot of beer or something like that, that's really yeasty, that's going to be on the red side. But the patient that you were referring to, she had been eating like really clean, not a lot of yeasty products, maybe gluten-free, no breads, things like that. And she was in the red though. And that's where you were like, there's got to be an external environmental impact there. That's really cool. That's a really cool test.
Yeah. And then if you look at the methylation, so methylation markers, these two acids, methylmalonic and then your FIGLU, these just relate to your body's ability to utilize folate and B12. And I've got a genetic variant in my MTHFR, but looks like my methylation is doing pretty darn good. But my biotin was low. And so my 3-hydroxypropenic acid and my 3-hydroxyisovaleric acid, those were both a little on the low side, especially the 3-hydroxypropenic acid. and that will affect your nerves. It can affect gene expression for hair as well. So I was like, oh man, I want to keep my hair. So that's hence the biotin, supplementation.
So, and on that, the scale is kind of interesting there because you got the red in the front, and there's a little patch of yellow and green, and then it goes yellow, red. So it's kind of like looking at it functionally. It's just there's like a perfect sweet spot. Can't have too much. Don't want to have too little.
That's right. Yep. Yeah, and these are metabolic byproducts. So we're looking at how certain nutrients get absorbed in the body and utilized. So sometimes you can look in the blood. Someone's got super high B12 levels, for example, but then they've got all the symptoms of low B12. So it's pretty fascinating when you look at it. So let's go to the cellular energy and mitochondrial markers. So if you look at fatty acid metabolism, this is your MCT oils, your medium chain triglycerides are what create a lot of this opportunity in that ketogenic cycle. So look at your adipic acid and your subburic acid. And if those look great, then that means you're more than likely metabolizing fatty acids properly. If you look at your tyronine markers, and that specifically relates to B6, this is your tryptophan metabolism. And so tryptophan, if you're using a lot of collagen as a protein source, those have some of your essential amino acids. They have 8 of the 9 essential amino acids, but you need to add tryptophan in there. Otherwise, you can become a little depleted in it. And so this also relates to, low NAD, low B6, if your tyronine markers are off at all. If you look on the carbohydrate metabolism, this one's pretty interesting because the first 2 markers, the pyruvic and lactic acid, that's low B1 and riboflavin. And this can happen when you're on low carbohydrate diet. You can see mine are low there, which we talked about earlier in that kind of Krebs citric acid cycle discussion. But then you can see on the blood sugar markers, so these 3, the alpha hydroxy butyric acid, the beta OH butyric acid, and the beta methylglutaric acid, those all relate to low blood sugar. So my blood sugar seems to be fine. As you can see there, those are all in the green. Catecholamine, this one's pretty interesting. And because this relates to your stress and dopamine metabolism. So if these are really high, that's where we see in people who have, just been chronic stress mode. And it also shows, how many of these markers you have and how much dopamine metabolism you've got going on in your body. And you can see all my 3 markers are, fortunately, they're in the green. So I think my exercise, my meditation, some of my stress response looks pretty good. I mean, even they're all in the kind of like low green, which might contribute to my calm T variant, which I don't metabolize dopamine quite as quickly as people who don't have that variant. So, but yeah, these are pretty interesting, I'd say. Because we're looking at what happens to your carbs, your fats, your proteins as they get metabolized. We're looking at all of the micronutrients and specifically B vitamins, antioxidants. We're looking at yeast and bacteria, and then we're looking at specific markers for blood sugar, and then we're looking at the brain as well. And so this next one, the serotonin markers, that shows how well your gut's making serotonin, and then it also shows your level of assertiveness. And so you can see mine's on the high side. It's kind of in the yellow. It's not to the red, but I can tell you, in almost every single entrepreneur and kind of people who are doing big things in their life, or trying to anyway, their serotonin always ends up being a bit high. And this is typical when we see like people who tend to have little more on their plate than what they can typically handle. Their serotonin levels get a little high, so that's the adaptive response. So So yeah, this is a pretty interesting one. It shows not only gut health, but also, how many projects you're taking on. And I'm apparently taking on a couple more than what's balanced. A little out of balance there.
Yeah.
But then you look at energy metabolism, and this one's interesting because it shows the oxidation and the mitochondrial health in your body. And so this is once again where you go through that entire Krebs cycle and look to see which one of these acids might be off. And then on your toxin and detoxification markers, this is really important because you can see if there's low glutathione and CoQ10 based on those markers. And mine look pretty darn good. I could use a little more glutathione, but everything's in the functional range. So staying pretty optimized there. So if you have issues in the energy metabolism, this is where our peptide of the day was LL31. SS-31, LL37, SS-31. And I'm going to share with you just a couple studies because, Cade, we always, we have a discussion last night on deposits into your biology and withdrawals. And so what you can start to see is, I can look at my Metabolomics and say, okay, I was making withdrawals, or I was making deposits. Oh, here's a withdrawal in my serotonin, right? And so, it's kind of interesting, or I can easily look where I was making plenty of deposits, but I forgot to put a deposit into my biotin. So now I'm making deposits there. But one of the big deposits that I've done to keep my mitochondria healthy and keep my oxidative stress low is by using like 5-amino-1M-cube, MOD-SC, and now the peptide SS-31. And so the best time to work on your health and make deposits was 20 years ago. Second best time is today. So make those deposits today. And SS-31, one of the studies that was performed is called Mitochondrial Targeted Peptide SS-31, improves cognitive function, behavior, and neuronal morphology in a mouse model of Alzheimer's disease. And this was in 2015. And what they found is that the treatment of SS-31 improved cognitive function. So that's brain health, reduced oxidative stress, improved neuronal morphology, so neuroplasticity, suggesting that this may have the potential to treat age-related cognitive decline. Another study in 2017, what they found is it helped with traumatic brain injury. So it found that it was really helpful in reducing oxidative stress in brains that had traumatic brain injuries. It helps with inflammation. And so once again, there's some potential there. And then the final test is they found that it helped with vascular oxidative stress and endothelial function. So it helped with spontaneous, non-treatment responsive hypertension. And so for those of you, if you have any kind of hypertension, SS-31 seems to work well on that. So those are some things you can add if you want a little more energy, and if you want to put some good energy back into your mitochondrial tank. So all right, so let's look at the next page, which is your organic acids. So this is how we can tell if you're developing kidney stones. I was relieved to see that I'm not. My oxalate markers are optimized. My glyceric acid could be a little better. My creatine looks great. If your creatine's low, that means you're typically having muscle breakdown. And that can be pretty damaging. Or if your creatine's high, then that can relate to kidney filtration issues, kidney disease. On the oxidative damage side, this is where you can see if there's cancer developing, if there's free radicals, you can see the cell wall damage. And then in the methylation markers, this just gives you a gene expression, shows metabolism, DNA protection. On the left-hand side, the MMA mutase shows energy, metabolism, and then production of B12 and B vitamins. On the right-hand side, the glutamate transferase shows glutamate metabolism and then dopamine and serotonin production. So I'm getting good production there, and good methylation. Worked on that for a lot of years. And then on the branched amino acid chain, this shows energy, muscle growth and repair, and also synthesis of hemoglobin, creatine, and glutathione. And so if your markers are off there, there's some things that need to be tweaked. Fortunately, mine look really good in this. These pathways are optimized. Cool. And man, isn't there a lot, Cade? I mean, there's
just such a vast amount of data. You could geek out on this for days. It's really good. You're crushing it, man. Well done. Like, overall, there's always different areas to improve on, but you got a lot of good stuff.
Yeah. This is, once again, it's nice when you can see with the deposits that I've made. It's like, okay, well, I'm doing pretty darn good, especially compared to the last one I took, which a couple of years ago I waited too long to take it again, and it's made improvements. So I'm happy about that. But I'll go through this final page just as we kind of summarize, so that everyone has a reference point, because I think in all the tests that I've ever done with our clients, this is the one that they're like, wait, what was that acid and what should I do? And so this would be a really good podcast to listen to. And maybe we'll send it to you before we do your next Metabolomics, so that it gives you an overview. So it creates context, and then it also gives you this is kind of a cheat sheet. So you can, understand what's going on in your body. But the next one, this is the amino acids profile. And this amino acids is really important because it shows how well you're utilizing proteins, enzymes, your neurotransmitters synthesis like dopamine, serotonin, your hormone synthesis, primarily insulin, and then it shows your cell growth and cellular health. So everything, amino acids, and this is why we're big fans on having you eat, ideally a gram of protein per pound of body weight, because this is the makeup of your body, and this is the substrates that keep all of the cells healthy and keeps your muscle mass built up and everything. So if you look at the amino acid profile, each one of these on the essential amino acids, the essential amino acids are the ones that you cannot make on your own. You've got to get it from food. And you can see there's a list of those there. Then the non-essential, the essential are the ones that you can kind of piece together. The non-essential protein amino acids, those are the ones that you've got to get from outside sources. And so if you look at these, you can kind of, if you have some that are off, I did not go through each one of those and put in what every amino acid does, because they have so many functions. But I think amino acids, you can see there's some like, if your taurine's too high, then we see this a lot in kids who drink a lot of Monsters, Red Bulls. I've never drank one before, but you can see my taurine's a little on the high side. And that could be just the high serotonin, high dopamine. But, if you see that you've got like glycine, like you look on the other side, I've got some glycine deficiency. That's an issue. If you've got high levels of asparagine, that means great, you're getting good nitric oxide production. If you've got lower levels of tyrosine, that can impact your liver. But these are all really important for your overall health. So on this metabolomic side, if you look on the B vitamin markers, B vitamins show that your ability to convert methionine or homocysteine. So if your homocysteine levels are high, then you want to look at these B vitamin markers. And that's one of the main markers we're always trying to drive down in your test, because we don't want that homocysteine present, because it shows you've got a breach in the blood-brain barrier. It also shows there's chronic inflammation. The urea cycle markers, this shows how well you're removing ammonia from protein digestion. And so this is really important, because this ammonia are these are byproducts that can really start building up and jamming up your kidneys. And so if your urea is like really high, then that means you're eating a lot of protein, but it's not getting broken down. So there's some issues there. In your glycine and serine metabolites, this shows how well your fat and proteins are being broken down. And you can see my protein glycine is 48, and that's the one that I'm optimizing right now. My serine's a little high. Everything else looks pretty good. But the one that's interesting, and Cade, this is where I think every man should be looking at this marker really intensely, because I think it's might be pretty close to as important as a PSA, but it's called sarcosine, and it shows if you have prostate cancer. If it's really high, it also shows if there's other kinds of cancer, kidney issues, or even schizophrenia. It's kind of interesting that the same metabolite shows up with prostate cancer as it does with schizophrenia.
Interesting. Very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Sarcosine. And so
yep,
that as low as possible, it looks like.
That's it. Yep. Yeah, you want that baby. Yeah, and it's got a pretty generous reference range, but yeah, you don't want that overexpressed. And then the final one on this right side is the dietary peptides. And this one's interesting because it shows how well your body's equipped to build muscle. And you can see there's the first two, the N-serine and the carnosine. These are dipeptides. That shows muscle protection and immunity. And so your muscles are really important for your overall immune function. And so those are two of the dipeptides that show how well they're doing. Mine are, pretty much in the optimal range. It looks like my N-serine could be a little better, but still in the green. And then the next one is the 1-methylhistidine, and that shows how much animal protein a person's eating. And mine is like, I don't really know what this means, and I've reached out to the lab to see if they can help with this, but mine is off the charts. I mean, it's super high. And so it's like, yeah, I eat a lot of animal protein, but does that mean it's too much? So to be determined there. My 3-methylhistidine shows the muscle breakdown, and mine looks really good. It's, it's in the green. So, and then that beta alanine shows your muscle mass overall. And so I should probably spell that muscle. There we go. Muscle mass 16. So that's good. I'm kind of at the top of the optimal range. So I think I'm building muscle mass as fast as my little body will let me. And then you can see creatinine concentration. This shows kidney issues or loss of muscle mass. Mine looks good there. So that is your Metabolomics overview. There's some other things we could dive into, but that is, hopefully that gives you guys a good understanding. So if we've gone through your Metabolomics, I'd say pick it up again, read through it. It'll give you a whole new perspective. If you haven't done it in a while, it's time to get it done. I like to do it every year so I can see where I've made withdrawals and where I've made deposits in my health. But that's it. And then SS-31, I think I'm really excited. We finally have a lab that can make that for us. So give SS-31 a try.
Love it. Well, awesome. That was incredible content, Reagan. Hopefully those of you out there that have ran your Metabolomics use this podcast to really understand it better, and you can use this as a resource. As well as if you haven't done your Metabolomics, I think this definitely inspired me. I got to get mine done quick. So thank you for that, Reagan. Awesome stuff. If you're listening to the podcast, you can also see all the visuals on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/East West Health. So the recording will be published there as well for everybody. And hope you all have an amazing day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.